Do freelancers need insurance?
Damn.
So this is something that I had never really even thought of, because why would a freelance web developer need business insurance? But my older brother became an insurance agent, and he was going through his initial training and certification. They were learning about business insurance, and it got him curious. So he started asking me about my business, my insurance, and so forth. And turns out I was a lot more at risk than what I thought. So I started doing some research on it, and what I'm going to do is just share with you what I found with this. So bottom line, do freelancers need insurance? My answer to that is yes. In fact, depending on your situation, you may need up to 3 different kinds of insurance. And those are general liability insurance, property insurance, and then professional liability insurance. Now, before I get into those, I know what you might be thinking, kind of what I was thinking back then. Like, really, do I need insurance, and up to 3 different kinds of insurance? Is that really legit? So let me give you an example. So in 2013, there was a British transcriber freelancer named Leslie Kemp who was hit with an $82,630 lawsuit because of one tweet that she had sent. So what happened is she was working with a guitar-based client, and they had paid her invoice late. So she decided to go on Twitter and send a tweet complaining about it, mention them by name, and they ended up suing her for libel. Now, the case was eventually dropped, not necessarily because it didn't have any merit, but because I guess in Britain there's this huge fee in order to initiate a lawsuit, and they didn't want to pay it. They still felt like they had a case, but it was dropped. And it's true that lawsuits can be meritless, but even still, you're going to have to defend yourself, hire lawyers and all that sort of thing, which can cost you thousands in and of itself, even if the case never makes it to trial. But if you have the right kind of insurance, it can cover those costs. So that may be an extreme example, but it's the potential that can happen out there, and why you just want to sort of cover your bases. If someone can get sued for one tweet, imagine all of the other things that you might be able to get sued for as a freelancer. So let's talk about the 3 that I mentioned. The first one's general liability insurance. It is, as the name implies, general liability insurance. So it's protection from general liability from all sorts of things, lawsuits, other claims, bodily injury claims. So if you have an office or you meet people at a location that you own, and let's say it's icy out and they slip and fall, it can potentially cover those sorts of claims, slander, libel, copyright, all of those different things. Now, of course, it's important to look at your exact policy, what it does and doesn't cover. Different companies, different policies, they're going to cover different things. So you really want to hone in on exactly what your policy does and does not cover. But generally, the way it works is that your policy is going to have a limit. So let's say $1 million, and they're just going to cover any expenses up to that limit, whatever they may be. So I think every freelancer should have this kind of insurance. It's not expensive, and it's a really good foundational base coverage to cover all the unexpected things, the things that you're not thinking of that might pop up while you're freelancing. And I've seen companies offering up to $1 million worth of insurance for as little as $19 a month. So it's a really small investment to make sure your bases are covered and you don't have to worry about it. All right, next up is property insurance. So if you have a lot of expensive equipment, I think you'll want to get this type of insurance. Now, keep in mind, if you have homeowners or renters insurance, that won't necessarily cover the items that you've purchased for or through your business. So you don't want to just assume that you're safe because you have either of those. It really depends on your policy. So you want to talk with your insurance agent and find out where you stand coverage-wise. But me personally, I like to keep my personal and business completely separate. So I like to have business insurance, business property insurance for my business equipment to ensure and guarantee that it's covered and I don't have to worry about it. All right, the last one then is professional liability insurance. So this is the one that is definitely optional. It's only going to apply in certain situations. So if your work has some sort of licensing, then you want to look into whether or not you want this kind of insurance. So for example, doctors, lawyers, engineers, those professions all tend to have some form of this kind of insurance. But IT consultants can also fall into this category. If the work that you do requires any kind of certification or licensing, there's this idea that you are now being positioned and certified as an expert. So you become a lot more liable and on the hook for potential mistakes and negligence and so forth. So you could be sued if something goes wrong with a client. So if you fall into that category, you have some sort of certification, there's some sort of licensing that goes along with what you do, then you'll definitely want to look into this kind of insurance, talk with your agent, see if it applies, and see if it's a good fit for what you do. So those are the 3 different types of insurance that you potentially want to get. Like I said, I highly recommend general liability, and if you have a lot of expensive equipment, property insurance at a minimum to make sure that your liability is covered and all of your equipment is covered and your business is protected.
Yeah.